The sun hammered down on forward operating base Chapman like a merciless anvil, turning the Afghan landscape into a shimmering mirage of dust and heat. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead as she watched the maintenance crew work on the Apache helicopters lined up on the flight line. The temperature gauge on the operations tent read 127 degrees Fahrenheit, but Maria had long since stopped paying attention to numbers that only confirmed what her body already knew. Maria had been deployed to Afghanistan for 8 months now, flying reconnaissance missions and providing air support for ground troops. As one of the few female Apache pilots in her unit, she had grown accustomed to the stares, the whispered comments, and the constant need to prove herself worthy of the machine she commanded. The AH-64 Apache was a beast of metal and technology, bristling with Hellfire missiles and a 30mm chain gun that could tear through enemy positions with devastating precision. It demanded respect from everyone who worked on it, and Maria had earned that respect through skill, determination, and countless hours of training. But today, something different caught her attention. A new face among the maintenance crew. A young woman with calloused hands and dirt-stained coveralls who moved around the Apache with the confidence of someone who understood every bolt, wire, and hydraulic line in the aircraft. The woman's name tape read Chun, and Maria could see the focused intensity in her dark eyes as she worked on cleaning the Apache's M230 chain gun. Specialist Amy Chun had arrived at the base 3 days earlier, fresh from advanced helicopter maintenance school at Fort Rucker, Alabama. At 22 years old, she was younger than most of the seasoned mechanics, but her technical scores had been among the highest in her class. The transition from the controlled environment of training to the harsh reality of a combat zone had been jarring, but Amy was determined to prove herself capable of maintaining the aircraft that kept soldiers alive. The maintenance bay buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for the evening mission briefings. Apache helicopters required meticulous care between flights. Every system had to be checked, every component inspected, and every weapon cleaned and calibrated. The M230 chain gun was particularly demanding, requiring precise attention to ensure it would function flawlessly when lives depended on it. Amy had been assigned to work under Technical Sergeant Rodriguez, a veteran mechanic with 15 years of experience maintaining military aircraft. Rodriguez had a reputation for being tough but fair, expecting excellence from everyone on his crew. He had seen too many good soldiers die because of mechanical failures to accept anything less than perfection. Chun, you're on gun maintenance today, Rodriguez had announced during the morning briefing. That bird flew 2 missions yesterday, and the pilot reported some inconsistency in the firing mechanism. I want you to strip it down, clean every component, and run a full diagnostic. Amy had nodded, knowing this was both an opportunity and a test. The M230 chain gun was one of the most complex weapons systems on the Apache, capable of firing 625 rounds per minute with devastating accuracy. It required a mechanic who understood not just the mechanics of the weapon, but the precision needed for combat effectiveness. As Maria watched from across the flight line, she noticed something unusual about Amy's approach to the work. Most mechanics worked efficiently, but with a certain routine detachment. They knew their jobs and performed them well, but there was a distance between them and the weapons they maintained. Amy was different. She handled each component with an almost reverent care, as if she understood the weight of responsibility that came with ensuring the weapon would function when needed. The Apache's gun system was mounted beneath the aircraft's nose, a sleek but intimidating piece of machinery that could pivot and track targets with computer-assisted precision. Amy had removed the gun's access panels and was methodically cleaning each component with specialized solvents and tools. Her movements were deliberate and careful, checking for where patterns, corrosion, or any signs of damage that might affect performance. Maria found herself drawn to watch the young mechanic work. There was something about Amy's focus and dedication that reminded Maria of her own early days in aviation, when every aspect of flying felt like a sacred trust. The responsibility of piloting an Apache was immense. The aircraft cost $35 million and carried enough firepower to level a building. But beyond the money and machinery, Maria knew she was responsible for the lives of the soldiers who depended on her support. The afternoon heat continued to build as Amy worked deeper into the gun's mechanisms. She had removed the bolt assembly and was examining each component under a magnifying glass, looking for the source of the inconsistency the pilot had reported. The work required patience and expertise. Rushing could result in overlooked problems that might prove fatal in combat. Rodriguez appeared at Amy's shoulder, checking her progress. "Find anything yet, Chun?" "Yes, Sergeant," Amy replied without looking up from her work. "There's some carbon buildup in the bolt extension, and I found a small scoring mark on the firing pin housing. Nothing critical, but enough to cause the timing issues the pilot reported." Rodriguez leaned in for a closer look, examining Amy's diagnosis. After a moment, he nodded approvingly. "Good eye. That scoring is barely visible, but you're right, it would definitely affect the firing sequence. How do you want to proceed?" Amy had already considered her options. "I'd like to replace the firing pin housing and completely degrease and recalibrate the bolt assembly. It'll take a few hours, but the gun will function like new when I'm finished." "Do it," Rodriguez approved. "But remember, this bird is scheduled for a mission tonight. You've got until 1800 hours to have it fully operational." As Rodriguez walked away, Amy felt the pressure of the deadline, but also the satisfaction of having accurately diagnosed the problem. She had studied the M230 system extensively during her training, but working on it in a combat environment added layers of complexity and urgency that no classroom could replicate. Maria continued to observe from a distance, impressed by the young mechanic's competence and attention to detail. She had worked with many maintenance crews over her career, and she could recognize skill when she saw it. Amy Chen clearly understood her craft, but there was something else about her, a depth of purpose that seemed to go beyond professional pride. The sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the Afghan mountains in shades of gold and amber. The base would come alive soon with the preparation for night missions, when Apache helicopters would take to the skies to provide overwatch and support for ground operations. The relative quiet of the afternoon would give way to the controlled chaos of combat operations. Amy had been working for nearly 4 hours when she finally began reassembling the gun system. Each component had been cleaned, inspected, and tested. The new firing pin housing fit perfectly, and the bolt assembly moved with the smooth precision that indicated proper calibration. She was ahead of schedule, which gave her time to run additional diagnostic tests to ensure everything was functioning within specifications. As she worked, Amy thought about the responsibility she carried. Every Apache pilot depended on the maintenance crew to ensure their aircraft would perform flawlessly in combat. A malfunction at the wrong moment could mean the difference between life and death, not just for the aircrew, but for the soldiers on the ground who relied on Apache support. The weight of that responsibility was something Amy carried personally. She had joined the Army not just for career opportunities or education benefits, but because she believed in serving something larger than herself. Her parents had immigrated to the United States when she was young, seeking opportunities and freedom they couldn't find elsewhere. Amy's service was her way of giving back to the country that had given her family a chance at a better life. Maria finally decided to approach the maintenance area. As an Apache pilot, she had every right to check on the status of aircraft maintenance, and she was genuinely curious about the young mechanic who had been working so diligently all afternoon. "How's it going?" Maria asked as she approached Amy's workstation. Amy looked up, recognizing the pilot's flight suit and rank insignia. "Going well, ma'am. I found the source of the firing inconsistency you reported and replaced the damaged components. The gun should function perfectly now. Mind if I take a look?" Maria asked. "Of course not, ma'am." Amy stepped aside to give Maria access to examine her work. Maria was impressed by the cleanliness and precision of Amy's workmanship. Every component was properly secured, all connections were tight, and the gun assembly looked like it had just come from the factory. "This looks excellent, specialist. How long have you been working on Apaches?" "This is actually my first week on Apaches, ma'am," Amy admitted. "I completed my advanced training on the systems, but this is my first deployment working on them in a combat environment." Maria was surprised. The quality of work she was seeing suggested much more experience. Well, you certainly know what you're doing. I've been flying Apaches for 4 years, and I can tell when maintenance is done right. This is some of the best work I've seen. Amy felt a flush of pride at the compliment from experienced pilot. Thank you, ma'am. I take the responsibility seriously. I know pilots and soldiers depend on this equipment working perfectly. As they talked, Maria noticed something about Amy's hands that caught her attention. The young mechanic was wearing long sleeves despite the oppressive heat, and the sleeves were pulled down to cover her wrists completely. It seemed unusual for someone doing manual labor in such high temperatures, but Maria didn't think much of it at the time. What got you interested in helicopter maintenance? Maria asked, genuinely curious about the young woman's background. I've always been interested in how things work, Amy replied. Even as a kid, I was taking apart radios and computers to see how they functioned. When I joined the Army, helicopter maintenance seemed like the perfect combination of mechanical challenge and meaningful service. Where are you from originally? Maria continued the conversation. California, ma'am. My parents own a small electronics repair shop in San Francisco. I grew up helping them fix everything from televisions to kitchen appliances. Maria nodded, understanding now where Amy's mechanical aptitude had developed. That explains your attention to detail. Electronics work requires the same kind of precision as aircraft maintenance. Yes, ma'am. My father always taught me that every repair job reflects on your character. If you're going to do something, do it right the first time. As Amy reached up to adjust something on the gun mount, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing what looked like scarred skin on her wrist. She quickly pulled the sleeve back down, but Maria caught a glimpse of what appeared to be burn marks or some other type of injury. Maria didn't say anything about what she had seen, respecting Amy's obvious desire to keep the injury covered. Everyone who served in combat zones carried wounds of various types, some visible, some hidden, all deserving of respect and privacy. The conversation was interrupted by Rodriguez returning to check on Amy's progress. How are we doing, Chun? Time's getting short. Just finishing the final calibration. Sergeant, Amy replied. I'll be ready to run the diagnostic test in about 10 minutes. Good. The pilots have their briefing at 1900, and they'll want to know their aircraft are ready. Rodriguez turned to Maria. Ma'am, will you be flying tonight? Yes, Sergeant. Call sign Eagle 6. This is my bird you're working on. Rodriguez nodded. Chen's work is solid, ma'am. You'll have a fully operational weapons system. As Rodriguez left to check on other maintenance tasks, Amy began the final diagnostic sequence on the gun system. The computer ran through each component, testing firing mechanisms, targeting systems, and ammunition feed systems. Every test showed green. All systems functioning within normal parameters. Diagnostics complete, ma'am, Amy announced. Everything checks out perfectly. Your aircraft is ready for tonight's mission. Maria examined the diagnostic readout, confirming that all systems were indeed functioning normally. Outstanding work, Specialist. I feel confident knowing you're maintaining my aircraft. Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot coming from an experienced pilot. As Maria prepared to leave for her pre-mission briefing, she found herself thinking about the young mechanic. Amy Chun clearly had exceptional skill and dedication, but there was something about her, a quiet strength and determination that suggested she had overcome significant challenges to reach this point. The interaction had lasted only about 30 minutes, but it had left an impression on both women. For Maria, it was reassuring to know that such capable hands were maintaining the aircraft she would fly into combat. For Amy, the recognition from an experienced pilot validated her skills and reinforced her sense of purpose. As the sun continued its descent toward the Afghan horizon, the base began its transformation from the relative quiet of afternoon to the controlled intensity of night operations. Apache helicopters would soon take to the skies, carrying pilots like Maria into danger, supported by the meticulous work of mechanics like Amy. Neither woman knew that their brief encounter that afternoon was the beginning of a connection that would reveal extraordinary courage and sacrifice. The story that would unfold over the coming days would challenge everything they thought they knew about heroism, survival, and the hidden battles fought by those who serve. For now, though, Maria headed to her briefing, confident in her aircraft and impressed by the young mechanic who had restored it to perfect working order. And Amy Chun continued her work, checking and double-checking every system, ensuring that the Apache would perform flawlessly when lives depended on it. The heat of the Afghan afternoon was beginning to give way to the cooler temperatures of evening, but the intensity of purpose remained constant. Every person on the base, from pilots to mechanics to support personnel, understood that they were part of something larger than themselves. Each person's individual contribution, no matter how small it might seem, was essential to the success and safety of the entire unit. As Maria walked across the flight line toward the operations building, she took one last look back at Amy working diligently on the Apache. There was something special about that young woman, though Maria couldn't yet put her finger on exactly what it was. She would soon learn that some stories of courage and sacrifice remain hidden beneath the surface, revealed only when circumstances demand their telling. The mission briefing room was thick with tension and the smell of strong coffee. Maria Santos sat in the third row, studying the tactical maps spread across the front wall while listening to the intelligence officer detail the night's operations. 2 Apache helicopters would provide overwatch for a convoy moving through a particularly dangerous stretch of highway where insurgents have been active for the past week. Intelligence indicates possible IED placement along Route Bravo, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison explained, pointing to red marks on the map. Ground units will move slowly and carefully, but they'll need eyes in the sky to watch for ambush positions and provide immediate fire support if contacted. Maria nodded along with the other pilots, mentally rehearsing emergency procedures and engagement protocols. She had flown similar missions dozens of times, but each one carried its own unique risks and challenges. The Apache's advanced sensor systems and powerful weapons made it an ideal platform for convoy escort missions, but it also made the aircraft a high-value target for enemy forces. Eagle 6 and Eagle 7 will maintain overwatch positions here, and here, the briefing officer continued, indicating 2 hilltops that provided optimal vantage points along the convoy route. Communication will be maintained on tactical frequency 7, and rules of engagement remain standard unless modified by ground commander. After the briefing, Maria walked out to the flight line, where her Apache waited under the harsh glare of floodlights. The aircraft looked sleek and menacing in the artificial illumination, its weapons systems and sensor equipment giving it the appearance of a technological predator. Amy Chun was performing final pre-flight checks, methodically working through a comprehensive checklist that would ensure every system was ready for combat operations. "How's she looking, Specialist?" Maria asked as she approached her aircraft. "Perfect, ma'am," Amy replied without hesitation. "All systems green, weapons fully functional, and I've double-checked the gun calibration we worked on this afternoon. She's ready for whatever you need tonight." Maria began her own pre-flight inspection, checking control surfaces, weapon systems, and engine components. As a pilot, she was responsible for verifying that her aircraft was airworthy, but she also relied heavily on the maintenance crew's expertise and attention to detail. The Apache was an incredibly complex machine with thousands of individual components that all had to work together flawlessly. "Specialist Chun," Maria said as she checked the main rotor assembly, "I noticed earlier that you're new to Apache maintenance, but your work quality suggests a lot more experience. Have you worked on other aircraft systems before?" Amy paused in her checklist for a moment before responding. "Yes, ma'am. I worked on helicopter systems during my training, and I spent some time working on civilian aircraft before I joined the Army. I've always been drawn to mechanical systems, especially when precision really matters." "What kind of civilian aircraft?" Maria asked, genuinely curious about Amy's background. "Mostly search and rescue helicopters, ma'am. I volunteered with a civilian SAR unit in California before I enlisted. We did mountain rescues and emergency medical evacuations." Amy's voice carried a note of pride when she mentioned the search and rescue work. Maria was impressed. Search and rescue operations required the same level of mechanical reliability as military operations. People's lives depended on aircraft functioning perfectly under challenging conditions. "That's excellent experience. SAR work teaches you to think about maintenance in life or death terms." "Exactly, ma'am. When someone is stranded on a mountain or injured in a remote area, aircraft failure isn't just inconvenient. It can be fatal. As they continued their respective inspections, Maria found herself wanting to know more about the young mechanic. There was something about Amy's dedication and competence that stood out, even among a crew of highly skilled professionals. But there's also something reserved about her, as if she was holding part of her story back. "Chen, do you mind if I ask what made you decide to join the Army?" Maria asked as she checked the aircraft's communication systems. Amy was quiet for a moment, continuing to work on her checklist while she considered her answer. "I wanted to serve something bigger than myself, ma'am. The search and rescue work showed me how important it is to be there when people need help, and military service seemed like a way to do that on a larger scale." "That's admirable," Maria replied. "Not everyone understands that kind of calling." "My family understands," Amy said quietly. "They've seen what it means to be part of something larger than individual concerns." Before Maria could ask what Amy meant by that comment, Captain Rodriguez approached with final mission updates. "Ma'am, ground units are moving out in 15 minutes. You'll need to be airborne in 20 to establish overwatch positions before the convoy reaches the danger area." "Roger that," Maria acknowledged. "Chun, is my aircraft ready for immediate departure?" "Absolutely, ma'am." All systems checked and verified. Maria climbed into the Apache's cockpit and began her startup procedures. The aircraft's engines spooled to life with a characteristic whine that gradually built to a powerful roar. All instrument readings showed normal parameters as the complex helicopter systems came online. Through her headset, she could hear radio traffic as other aircraft and ground units coordinated their movements. As Maria prepared to lift off, she saw Amy step back from the aircraft and give a thumbs-up signal indicating all was ready. Even in the harsh glare of the floodlights, Maria could see the serious expression on the young mechanic's face, the look of someone who understood the gravity of sending aircraft and crew into danger. The Apache lifted off smoothly and climbed into the Afghan night sky. Maria could see the lights of the convoy beginning to move along the designated route far below, while her aircraft moved into position to provide overwatch. The mission proceeded normally for the first 2 hours, with the convoy making steady progress through the dangerous terrain. But at 2,347 hours, everything changed. "Eagle 6, this is Groundhog 7, came the urgent voice of the convoy commander over the radio. "We have contact. Multiple insurgents with small arms and RPGs. We're taking effective fire from the ridgeline to our north." Maria immediately adjusted her position to locate the enemy forces. "Groundhog 7, Eagle 6. I have visual on muzzle flashes. Initiating engagement." The Apache's targeting system locked onto the insurgent positions, and Maria triggered the M230 chain gun that Amy had worked on so carefully that afternoon. The weapon functioned flawlessly, sending precisely aimed rounds into the enemy positions and suppressing their fire. "Good hits, Eagle 6, reported the convoy commander. "Enemy fire has ceased. You probably saved some lives tonight." As Maria returned to her overwatch position, she thought about the chain of events that had made her successful engagement possible. Amy Chen's meticulous work on the gun system had ensured it functioned perfectly when lives depended on it. The young mechanic's attention to detail and commitment to excellence had directly contributed to saving soldiers' lives. The convoy completed its movement without further incident, and Maria's Apache returned to base at 0430 hours. As she shut down the aircraft and completed her post-flight inspection, she saw Amy waiting nearby to begin post-mission maintenance checks. "How did she perform, ma'am?" Amy asked as Maria climbed out of the cockpit. "Flawlessly," Maria replied. "That gun system you worked on today functioned perfectly when we needed it. Your work may have saved lives tonight." Amy's face showed a mixture of satisfaction and something else, perhaps relief or validation that her efforts had meaningful impact. "That's why I do this job, ma'am, knowing that the work matters." "It definitely matters," Maria assured her. "When pilots like me go into combat, we depend completely on the expertise and dedication of people like you." As Amy began her post-flight maintenance inspection, Maria noticed once again how the young woman kept her sleeves pulled down despite the continuing heat. The brief glimpse she had gotten earlier of what appeared to be scarring on Amy's wrist had stayed with her, but she respected Amy's obvious desire for privacy. "Chun," Maria said as she prepared to leave for debriefing, "I want you to know that your work today was exceptional. I've been flying for 4 years, and I can tell when maintenance is done right. You clearly take pride in your craft." "Thank you, ma'am. That means a great deal coming from experienced pilot." As Maria walked back toward the operations building for mission debriefing, she found herself thinking about Amy Chun and the dedication she brought to her work. There was something special about the young mechanic, a combination of technical skill and personal commitment that went beyond professional requirements. The debriefing session focused on the tactical aspects of the mission, including the successful engagement with insurgent forces and the effective coordination between air and ground units. Maria's accurate gunfire had suppressed enemy positions and allowed the convoy to continue its movement safely. The mission was classified as a complete success, but as Maria finally headed to her quarters for a few hours of sleep before the next day's operations, her thoughts kept returning to Amy Chun and the meticulous work that had made the mission's success possible. She was beginning to understand that the young mechanic brought something unusual to her job, a depth of purpose and commitment that suggested personal experiences had taught her the true value of service and sacrifice. Over the next few days, Maria found opportunities to observe Amy's work and engage her in conversation. The more she learned about the young mechanic, the more impressed she became with both her technical skills and her character. Amy approached every maintenance task with the same careful attention to detail, whether it was routine inspection or complex repairs. "Chun has been doing outstanding work," Technical Sergeant Rodriguez mentioned to Maria one afternoon. "She's only been here a week, but she's already proving to be one of the best mechanics I've worked with. She understands that aircraft maintenance isn't just about following procedures. It's about understanding why those procedures matter." "She definitely has that understanding," Maria agreed. "I've noticed she approaches her work like someone who knows lives depend on it." "That's exactly right," Rodriguez said. "Some mechanics learn that perspective over time, through experience. Chun seems to have arrived with it already. Makes me curious about her background." Maria was curious about Amy's background too, but she sensed that the young woman's story contained elements she wasn't ready to share. There was a depth to Amy's character that suggested she had faced significant challenges or experiences that had shaped her understanding of service and sacrifice. During one of their conversations, Amy mentioned her family's electronics repair business in San Francisco. "My parents worked incredibly hard to build that business," she said. "They taught me that every job, no matter how small, should be done with complete integrity. Their reputation depended on the quality of their work, and people trusted them to fix things that were important to them." "That's a valuable lesson," Maria observed. "The same principle applies to aircraft maintenance. People trust us to do our jobs with complete integrity because their lives depend on it." "Exactly," Amy agreed. "My parents' customers might lose a television or a computer if the repair was done wrong. Here, the stakes are much higher, but the principle is the same. Do the job right every time because someone is counting on you." As the days passed, Maria began to understand that Amy Chun represented something special, a person who brought exceptional skill and character to a job that demanded nothing less than excellence. The young mechanic's work continued to be flawless, and her dedication never wavered, even during the long shifts and difficult conditions of deployment. But Maria also sensed that Amy's story contained elements that remained hidden beneath the surface. The way she kept her sleeves covered, the depth of purpose she brought to her work, and the occasional glimpses of something that seemed like sadness or loss suggested experiences that had shaped her in profound ways. The opportunity to learn more about Amy's story would come sooner than Maria expected, under circumstances that would reveal the extraordinary courage and sacrifice that had brought the young mechanic to this point in her life. For now, though, Maria continued to be impressed by Amy's work and character, grateful to know that such capable and dedicated hands were maintaining the aircraft that carried her into danger. The rhythm of deployment life continued, with daily missions and maintenance cycles that kept everyone focused on their responsibilities. But beneath the routine activities, connections were forming and stories were waiting to be revealed. Sometimes the most profound acts of courage and sacrifice remain hidden until circumstances bring them to light. And sometimes those revelations change everything we thought we knew about heroism and service. 3 weeks into Amy Chin's deployment, the routine of combat operations had settled into a predictable rhythm. Daily maintenance schedules, mission briefings, equipment checks, and the constant awareness that danger lurked beyond the base perimeter had become part of life at Forward Operating Base Chapman. For Amy, each day brought opportunities to refine her skills and prove her value to the maintenance team. Maria Santos had grown to respect and appreciate Amy's work enormously. Every aircraft that Amy maintained performed flawlessly, and her attention to detail had prevented several potential problems from becoming serious mechanical issues. The other mechanics had also noticed Amy's exceptional abilities and had begun seeking her input on complex repairs and technical problems. "Chun, I need you to look at something," Staff Sergeant Williams called out one morning as Amy arrived for her shift. Williams was a senior mechanic with 12 years of experience, and his request carried significant weight. Bird 7 has been showing inconsistent hydraulic pressure readings. I've been through the entire system twice, but I can't find the source of the problem. Amy followed Williams to the Apache designated as Eagle 7, studying the maintenance logs and diagnostic reports as they walked. Hydraulic systems were critical to helicopter operation. They powered the flight controls, weapon systems, and landing gear. Any inconsistency could indicate a potentially catastrophic failure waiting to happen. "What kind of pressure variations are you seeing?" Amy asked as she examined the hydraulic system components. Primary system shows normal pressure most of the time, but during high-stress maneuvers, pressure drops about 15% for a few seconds, then returns to normal, Williams explained. The diagnostic computer isn't showing any error codes, and all the obvious components check out fine. Amy studied the system layout, tracing hydraulic lines from the pumps through the distribution manifolds to the various system components. She had encountered similar problems during her training on civilian aircraft, where intermittent issues often indicated problems that weren't immediately obvious. "Has this aircraft been subjected to any hard landings or high-G maneuvers recently?" Amy asked. Williams checked the flight logs. "Actually, yes. 5 days ago, the crew made an emergency landing after taking small arms fire. Nothing serious enough to ground the aircraft, but they came in pretty hard." Amy nodded, forming a hypothesis about what might be causing the pressure variations. "I'd like to check the accumulator assemblies and pressure relief valves. Sometimes hard landings can cause internal damage that doesn't show up on standard diagnostics." "Good thinking," Williams agreed. "That's exactly the kind of problem that would cause intermittent symptoms." As Amy began disassembling the hydraulic accumulator, she explained her reasoning to Williams. "These accumulators are designed to maintain system pressure during brief periods of high demand. If the internal bladder or sealing surfaces were damaged during the hard landing, you'd get exactly the symptoms you're describing, pressure drops during stress, but normal operation most of the time." Williams watched as Amy carefully examined each component under magnification. Her systematic approach and understanding of how different systems interacted impressed him. Many mechanics could follow diagnostic procedures effectively, but Amy demonstrated the kind of intuitive understanding that came from truly comprehending how mechanical systems worked. "There," Amy said, pointing to a microscopic crack in one of the accumulator's sealing surfaces. "This crack is so small it doesn't affect normal operation, but under high pressure it allows fluid to bypass, causing the pressure drop." Williams leaned in for a closer look, barely able to see the defect Amy had identified. "Outstanding diagnosis. I never would have found that without completely disassembling the entire accumulator assembly. You saved us hours of troubleshooting. It's just a matter of understanding how the system responds to stress," Amy replied modestly. "The symptoms told us where to look. We just had to think about what could cause that specific pattern of problems." As Amy began installing a replacement accumulator, Williams found himself curious about her background and training. "Chin, I have to ask, where did you learn to diagnose problems like that? Your technical understanding is exceptional for someone so early in their career." Amy continued working as she answered, her focus remaining on the precise installation of the new component. I spent a lot of time learning from experienced mechanics before I joined the Army. My parents' business taught me to think systematically about mechanical problems, and the search and rescue work showed me how to troubleshoot under pressure. Search and rescue work. Williams asked, I didn't know you had that background. I volunteered with the civilian SAR unit in California for about 2 years before I enlisted, Amy explained. We maintained our own helicopters, and mechanical failures during rescue operations could be fatal for the people we were trying to help. That kind of responsibility teaches you to be very thorough. Williams nodded, understanding now why Amy approached maintenance with such seriousness and attention to detail. That explains a lot. SAR work requires the same kind of precision as military operations. People's lives depend on equipment working perfectly when it's needed most. Exactly, Amy agreed. In rescue operations, you don't get second chances. If an aircraft fails during a mission, people die. The pressure variations that had plagued the aircraft for several days were completely eliminated, and the system now functioned within perfect specifications. Excellent work, Chun, Williams said as he reviewed the diagnostic results. This aircraft is ready for full operational status. Your troubleshooting saved us from potentially grounding the bird for days while we searched for that problem. Thank you, Sergeant. I'm glad I could help solve the issue. As Williams walked away to update the maintenance logs, Amy continued her routine inspection of the aircraft. She had developed a systematic approach to post-repair verification that went beyond the standard checklist requirements. Every system that connected to or depended on the repaired component received additional scrutiny to ensure that the repair hadn't inadvertently affected other systems. Maria Santos approached the maintenance area during Amy's inspection, checking on the status of her primary aircraft. How's Eagle 7 looking, Sean? All systems fully operational, ma'am, Amy reported. We found and fixed a hydraulic accumulator problem that was causing pressure variations. The aircraft is ready for any mission requirements. Outstanding. I heard from Williams that you diagnosed a problem he'd been working on for days. That's impressive troubleshooting. Amy felt a flush of pride at the recognition from both the senior mechanic and the experienced pilot. Thank you, ma'am. It was just a matter of thinking about how the symptoms related to the aircraft's operational history. That kind of analytical thinking is what separates good mechanics from great ones, Maria observed. You clearly understand that aircraft maintenance is as much about problem-solving as it is about following procedures. As Maria continued her inspection, she noticed once again that Amy kept her sleeves pulled down despite the oppressive heat. The young mechanic's dedication to her work was obvious, but Maria sensed there were aspects of Amy's story that remained unexplored. The depth of purpose she brought to her job suggested experiences that had shaped her understanding of service and responsibility in profound ways. Chun, do you mind if I ask about your search and rescue experience? Maria said as they worked around the aircraft. What kind of operations did you support? Amy paused in her work, considering how much of her story she wanted to share. We did mountain rescues, mostly, ma'am. Hikers and climbers who got into trouble in remote areas. Sometimes medical evacuations from places that ground ambulances couldn't reach. That must have been rewarding work, Maria said, knowing that your skills directly saved lives. It was, Amy agreed quietly. But it was also challenging. Sometimes the conditions were very dangerous, and not every mission had a happy ending. Something in Amy's tone suggested that her search and rescue experience had included some difficult or traumatic situations. Maria respected the young woman's obvious reluctance to elaborate, but she sensed that Amy's past contained experiences that had profoundly shaped her character and dedication. The skills you learned in that environment clearly transfer well to military operations, Maria observed. Both require the same kind of precision and reliability. Yes, ma'am. The stakes are always high when people depend on aircraft for their safety. As they continued working, Maria found herself increasingly curious about Amy's background. But she also recognized that the young mechanic would share more of her story when she felt ready. For now, it was enough to know that Amy brought exceptional skills and unwavering dedication to her work. The day's operational tempo picked up as afternoon missions began launching. Amy transitioned between multiple aircraft, performing pre-flight inspections and addressing any maintenance issues that arose. Her reputation for thorough work and accurate problem diagnosis had spread throughout the unit, and pilots specifically requested that she handle maintenance on their aircraft when possible. During one pre-flight inspection, Amy discovered a loose connection in an Apache's communication system that could have caused radio failures during mission-critical moments. Her attention to detail prevented what could have been a serious operational problem, and the aircraft was able to launch on schedule with full communication capability. Chen's becoming our go-to mechanic for complex problems. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez mentioned to Maria during the afternoon maintenance briefing. Her diagnostic skills are exceptional, and she has an intuitive understanding of how different systems interact. It's rare to see that level of ability in someone so early in their military career. She definitely has something special, Maria agreed. Her work has been flawless since she arrived, and she approaches every task like lives depend on it, which they do. That's exactly what impresses me most about her, Rodriguez said. She understands the weight of responsibility that comes with aircraft maintenance. Some mechanics learn that over time, but Chen seems to have arrived with that understanding already developed. As the day progressed into evening, Amy completed her assigned maintenance tasks and began preparing for the next day's operations. Her systematic approach to work included detailed documentation of every repair, adjustment, and inspection she performed. The maintenance logs she created were models of clarity and thoroughness, providing future mechanics with comprehensive information about aircraft status and history. But as Amy worked late into the evening, double-checking her work and ensuring every detail was perfect, she seemed lost in thought. The conversation about search and rescue operations had brought back memories she usually kept carefully controlled, and Maria could sense that something was weighing on the young mechanic's mind. "Chen, you've been working for 12 hours straight," Rodriguez said as he prepared to leave for the day. "Why don't you call a night and get some rest? Tomorrow's going to be another busy day." "I just want to finish documenting today's repairs, Sergeant," Amy replied. "I'll be done in a few minutes." Rodriguez nodded and headed toward his quarters, leaving Amy alone in the maintenance bay with her thoughts and her meticulous documentation. The quiet of evening had settled over the base, broken only by the distant sounds of aircraft operations and the hum of electronic equipment. As Amy completed her paperwork, she found herself thinking about the path that had brought her to this point. The search and rescue work she had mentioned to Maria and Williams had indeed been formative, but it had also been the source of experiences she wasn't ready to share with anyone. The scars on her wrists that she kept carefully hidden were reminders of a rescue mission that had gone catastrophically wrong, when her commitment to saving lives had nearly cost her own. Those experiences had taught Amy that service sometimes required sacrifice, and that the people who maintained life-saving equipment carried a responsibility that extended far beyond their technical duties. Every bolt she tightened, every system she calibrated, and every problem she solved was connected to the safety and survival of people who depended on aircraft to bring them home safely. The weight of that responsibility was something Amy carried gladly, knowing that her skills and dedication could make the difference between life and death for pilots like Maria Santos and the soldiers they supported. But it was also a reminder of the price that service sometimes demanded, and the scars that remained long after the immediate danger had passed. As Amy finally finished her work and prepared to leave the maintenance bay, she took one last look at the Apache helicopters lined up on the flight line. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that her commitment to excellence was unwavering. The aircraft would fly their missions safely because people like Amy Chun ensured that every system functioned perfectly when lives depended on it. The story of what had happened during that final search and rescue mission, the events that had left their mark on Amy's body and soul, remained untold. But the dedication and skill she brought to her current assignment were direct results of experiences that had taught her the true meaning of service and sacrifice. Sometimes the most profound lessons are learned in moments of greatest danger, and sometimes those lessons shape everything that follows. The morning of June 15th started like any other at forward operating base Chapman, but by afternoon, everything would change for Amy Chun and Maria Santos. The temperature had already climbed past 110 degrees by, 800 hours, and the maintenance crews were working to complete as many tasks as possible before the heat became truly unbearable. Amy was performing a routine inspection on Eagle 6 when she noticed something unusual about one of the rotor blade attachments. The titanium bolt that secured the blade to the rotor hub showed signs of microscopic stress fracturing, hairline cracks that were barely visible but could lead to catastrophic failure if left unchecked. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Amy called out, "I need you to take a look at something." Rodriguez approached and examined the bolt under magnification. "Good catch, Chun. That fracturing isn't immediately dangerous, but it could become a serious problem very quickly. How did you spot something that small?" The bolt head showed unusual wear patterns that didn't match normal operational stress, Amy explained. "When I looked closer, I could see the stress fractures starting to form. In another few flight hours, this could have led to blade separation." Rodriguez whistled softly. "Blade separation would be fatal for the aircraft and crew. Your attention to detail just prevented a potential disaster." As Amy began the process of replacing the damaged bolt, she reflected on how many small details could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophe. The Apache helicopter was an incredibly complex machine with thousands of components, any one of which could cause critical failure if it wasn't properly maintained. The bolt replacement required careful precision. The torque specifications had to be exact, and the installation process followed strict procedures to ensure proper stress distribution. Amy worked methodically, checking and rechecking each step as she installed the new titanium bolt and verified its proper seating in the rotor hub assembly. "Chun, when you're finished with that repair, I need you to prep Eagle 7 for an urgent mission," Rodriguez informed her. "Intelligence indicates a high-value target in the area, and the birds need to be ready for immediate departure." Amy nodded, understanding that urgent missions meant lives were at stake and mechanical reliability was absolutely critical. She completed the bolt replacement and moved immediately to Eagle 7, beginning a comprehensive pre-flight inspection that would ensure the aircraft was ready for whatever challenges the mission might present. As Amy worked on Eagle 7, Maria Santos received her mission briefing in the operations center. Intelligence had located a high-ranking insurgent leader who was planning attacks against coalition forces. The window of opportunity to capture or neutralize the target was narrow, requiring immediate action. Eagle 6 and Eagle 7 will provide close air support for the ground assault team, the briefing officer explained. The target is located in a compound approximately 40 kilometers from base, in terrain that provides multiple escape routes. Speed and precision will be essential. Maria studied the tactical maps and satellite imagery, noting the challenging terrain and the proximity of civilian areas. This type of mission required exceptional coordination between air and ground forces with split-second decision-making that could determine success or failure. Rules of engagement are weapons tight until positive identification of hostile intent, the briefing officer continued. We need to minimize civilian casualties while ensuring the target doesn't escape. As Maria prepared for the mission, she felt the familiar combination of adrenaline and focused concentration that came with high-stakes operations. She had flown dozens of similar missions, but each one carried its own unique challenges and risks. Back on the flight line, Amy was completing her inspection of Eagle 7 when she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. One of the hydraulic lines showed signs of chafing where it passed through a support bracket. Not enough to cause immediate failure, but potentially dangerous during extended high-stress operations. The discovery presented a difficult decision. The chafing wasn't severe enough to ground the aircraft under normal circumstances, but the upcoming mission would likely involve extended periods of high-stress maneuvering that could cause the weakened line to fail. A hydraulic failure during combat operations could be fatal for the aircrew and jeopardize the entire mission. Amy checked the time and calculated how long it would take to replace the hydraulic line. The mission was scheduled to launch in 90 minutes, which gave her just enough time to complete the repair if she worked quickly and efficiently. But rushing critical repairs was exactly the kind of shortcut that led to mechanical failures. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Amy called out, "I need to discuss something with you." Rodriguez could hear the concern in Amy's voice as she explained the hydraulic line issue and the time constraints. They both understood the implications. Delaying the mission could allow the target to escape, but launching with a potentially compromised aircraft could result in loss of crew and mission failure. "What's your professional recommendation?" Rodriguez asked. Amy took a deep breath before answering. "I can replace the line in time for the mission launch, but only if I skip some of the standard verification procedures. The repair itself will be solid, but I wouldn't have time for complete testing." Rodriguez considered the situation carefully. He trusted Amy's skills and judgment, but he also knew that combat operations placed enormous stress on aircraft systems. "Can you guarantee the repair will hold under combat conditions?" "I can guarantee that the repair will be properly executed," Amy replied honestly. "But without full testing, I can't guarantee there won't be other issues related to the replacement that don't show up until the aircraft is under stress." It was exactly the kind of honest assessment that Rodriguez respected about Amy's approach to her work. Many mechanics would have given false assurances or tried to downplay the risks, but Amy understood that lives depended on accurate information about aircraft reliability. "Do it," Rodriguez decided, "but I want you to brief the pilot personally about the repair and any potential limitations." Amy immediately began the process of replacing the hydraulic line, working with practiced efficiency while maintaining her exacting standards for precision. Each connection had to be perfect, every fitting properly torqued, and all routing checked for clearance and protection against future chafing. As Amy worked, she thought about the responsibility she carried. Somewhere beyond the base perimeter, insurgent forces were planning attacks against coalition troops. The success of the mission to stop those attacks depended partly on her ability to ensure that Eagle 7 would function flawlessly when lives depended on it. The hydraulic line replacement required accessing components in cramped spaces within the aircraft's fuselage. Amy worked carefully but quickly, her experience allowing her to perform complex tasks efficiently without sacrificing quality. Each connection was checked twice, and every fitting was verified for proper installation. With 30 minutes remaining before the mission launch, Amy completed the hydraulic line installation and began the abbreviated testing sequence that time constraints allowed. The system showed normal pressure and flow rates, and all connections appeared secure. But the comprehensive stress testing that would normally follow a major repair would have to wait until after the mission. Maria Santos arrived at her aircraft as Amy was completing the final system checks. "How's she looking, Shun?" "Good overall, ma'am," Amy replied. "But I need to brief you on a repair I just completed." Amy explained the hydraulic line replacement and the time limitations that had prevented complete testing. "The repair is solid and should function normally, but I wanted you to be aware that we haven't had time for full stress testing." Maria appreciated Amy's honesty and attention to detail. Many mechanics might have glossed over the limitations or presented the repair as completely verified. Amy's straightforward assessment gave Maria the information she needed to make informed decisions during the mission. "Any specific limitations or precautions I should observe?" Maria asked. "No specific limitations, ma'am. The system should function normally under all conditions. I just wanted you to know that if you experience any hydraulic anomalies, they could potentially be related to the line replacement." "Understood. Thanks for the honest assessment." As Maria began her pre-flight checks, Amy performed final inspections on both aircraft that would participate in the mission. Her earlier discovery of the stress-fractured rotor bolt had prevented one potential disaster, and her quick work on the hydraulic line had kept Eagle 7 mission ready. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the compressed timeline had forced compromises in her normally thorough approach. The mission briefing had emphasized speed and precision, but Amy knew that mechanical reliability was the foundation that made both possible. Aircraft that failed during critical moments didn't just jeopardize individual missions. They put entire teams at risk and could have strategic implications beyond immediate tactical objectives. With 15 minutes remaining before launch, Amy completed her final checks and signed off on both aircraft as ready for immediate departure. As she watched Maria and the other pilot complete their pre-flight procedures, she felt the familiar mixture of pride and anxiety that came with sending aircraft into danger. "Chun," Rodriguez said as the pilots prepared to start their engines, "you've done excellent work under pressure today. That bolt replacement and hydraulic line repair may have prevented serious problems during the mission." "Thank you, Sergeant. I just hope everything functions properly when they need it most." As the Apache helicopters lifted off and disappeared into the Afghan sky, Amy remained on the flight line, watching until they were no longer visible. Somewhere in the distance, those aircraft would soon be supporting ground troops in dangerous terrain, and their mechanical reliability could determine who came home safely. The waiting began. That particular tension that maintenance crews felt when aircraft they had worked on were flying combat missions. Every system Amy had checked, every component she had repaired, and every procedure she had followed would soon be tested under the most demanding conditions possible. Amy returned to the maintenance bay and began preparing for the post-mission inspections that would follow the aircraft's return. But she also found herself thinking about the compromises that combat operations sometimes forced. The hydraulic line repair had been necessary and properly executed, but the abbreviated testing left uncertainties that wouldn't be resolved until the mission was complete. As the afternoon heat continued to build, Amy threw herself into routine maintenance tasks, trying to stay focused on immediate responsibilities while part of her attention remained fixed on the mission in progress. Radio traffic from the operation was restricted, leaving the maintenance crews with little information about how things were proceeding. The sound of approaching helicopters finally broke the afternoon silence 3 hours after the mission had launched. Amy looked up to see both Apache aircraft returning to base, apparently undamaged, and flying normally. The sight of both aircraft safely returning brought immediate relief, but Amy knew the real test would come during post-flight inspection. As Maria's Apache settled onto the landing pad, Amy could see that the aircraft showed signs of hard use. Dust and debris covered the fuselage, and the weapon system showed evidence of having been fired. But the fact that the aircraft had returned under its own power was encouraging evidence that all systems had functioned properly during the mission. "How did she perform?" Amy asked as Maria shut down the engines and began her post-flight checks. "Flawlessly," Maria replied with satisfaction. "All systems functioned perfectly, including the hydraulic repair you made. We took some small arms fire, but nothing that caused any damage." Amy felt a surge of relief and professional satisfaction. The repair she had completed under time pressure had performed exactly as intended, maintaining system integrity throughout a challenging combat mission. The target was successfully neutralized, Maria continued, and all ground personnel are safe. It was a textbook operation, and having fully functional aircraft was essential to the success. As Amy began her post-mission inspection of the aircraft, she reflected on the events of the day. Her attention to detail had prevented potential disaster. Her quick work had kept critical aircraft mission ready, and her honest communication had given pilots the information they needed to operate safely. But the day's events had also highlighted something about Amy's character that went beyond technical competence. Her willingness to take on difficult repairs under pressure, her commitment to honesty about limitations and risks, and her dedication to ensuring mission success had demonstrated the depth of her commitment to service. As Amy worked through the comprehensive post-mission inspection, documenting the aircraft's condition and identifying any new maintenance requirements, she thought about the chain of decisions and actions that had contributed to the day's success. Every person involved, from intelligence analysts to ground troops to aircrew to maintenance personnel, had played essential roles in achieving the mission objective safely. The hydraulic system that Amy had repaired showed no signs of stress or abnormal wear, confirming that her work had been successful. All other systems had functioned within normal parameters throughout the demanding mission, validating the thorough maintenance procedures that kept the aircraft operationally ready. But as Amy completed her inspection and prepared her reports, she knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove her dedication to excellence. The nature of combat operations meant that aircraft maintenance was a continuous cycle of preparation, repair, and verification that never truly ended. The events of June 15th had tested Amy's skills and judgment under pressure, and she had met those tests successfully. But they had also revealed something about her character that would soon become even more significant as her story continued to unfold. The commitment to service that drove her work was rooted in experiences that went far beyond her current assignment, and those experiences would soon be revealed under circumstances that would change everything Maria Santos thought she knew about courage and sacrifice. The day that would change everything began with a routine maintenance inspection that revealed an unexpected problem. Amy Chun was performing her standard pre-flight check on Eagle 6 when she discovered damage to the aircraft's environmental control system that hadn't been apparent during the previous day's post-mission inspection. "This is strange," Amy muttered as she examined the damaged components. The environmental system that provided climate control and pressurization for the aircrew showed signs of impact damage, as if something had struck the external housing during the previous mission. Amy called for Technical Sergeant Rodriguez, who examined the damage and frowned at what he saw. This definitely wasn't in yesterday's post-mission report. The damage must have been hidden by dust and debris until now. "The system is still functional, but barely," Amy assessed. "The housing is cracked, and some of the internal components are damaged. In this heat, losing environmental control could be serious for aircrew during extended missions." Rodriguez checked the mission schedule and grimaced. "We have a critical resupply mission scheduled for this afternoon. Ground units in remote outposts depend on those supplies, and weather conditions mean today is the only window for delivery." Amy studied the damaged system carefully, tracing the extent of the damage and considering repair options. The environmental control system was complex, with components that regulated cabin pressure, temperature, and air filtration. Repairing it properly would require several hours of careful work. "I can fix this," Amy said after completing her assessment, "but it's going to take most of the day. The housing needs to be replaced, and I'll have to recalibrate the entire system afterward." "How confident are you about completing the repair in time for the afternoon mission?" Rodriguez asked. Amy considered the question carefully, mentally reviewing each step of the repair process. "If I start immediately and work straight through, I can have it completed by 1500 hours. But that's cutting it close, and there won't be time for extensive testing." "The mission is critical," Rodriguez decided. "Ground units are running low on essential supplies, and weather forecasts show a storm system moving in tomorrow that would prevent resupply flights for several days." Amy nodded and immediately began the process of disassembling the damaged environmental system. The work was meticulous and time-consuming, requiring careful attention to routing of electrical connections and calibration of sensitive components. As Amy worked, Maria Santos arrived to check on her aircraft status. "How's Eagle 6 looking today, Chun?" "I'm repairing environmental system damage from yesterday's mission," Amy explained without stopping her work. "The system took an impact that cracked the housing and damaged some internal components." Maria examined the damage and understood immediately why Amy was working so intensively. Environmental control might seem like a luxury, but in the extreme heat of Afghanistan, it was essential for aircrew performance and safety during extended missions. "How long until the repair is complete?" Maria asked. "I should have it finished by 1500 hours, ma'am. The system will function normally once the repair is complete." Maria could see the focused intensity in Amy's work and the care she was taking with each component. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "Actually, yes, ma'am," Amy said, surprising Maria with the request. "I could use someone to hold components while I work on the wiring connections. The space is cramped, and having an extra set of hands would speed up the process." For the next 3 hours, Maria found herself working alongside Amy, holding components and tools while the young mechanic performed the complex repair. The experience gave Maria new appreciation for the skill and precision required for aircraft maintenance, and deeper insight into Amy's character and capabilities. "You make this look easier than it actually is," Maria observed as Amy carefully routed new wiring through the cramped space of the environmental system housing. "It's just a matter of understanding how all the systems work together," Amy replied. continuing her meticulous work. Every connection has to be perfect because aircrew safety depends on this system functioning properly. As they worked together, Maria found herself impressed not just by Amy's technical skills, but by her calm confidence and systematic approach to complex problems. The young mechanic handled each aspect of the repair with the kind of expertise that normally took years to develop. Chen, I have to ask, where did you develop this level of expertise? Your skills seem far beyond what I'd expect from someone at your experience level. Amy paused in her work, considering how much of her background to share. The close working relationship that had developed during the repair had created a level of trust that made her more willing to open up about her past. I've been working on aircraft systems longer than my military record shows, Amy said carefully. Before I joined the Army, I spent several years with a search and rescue unit that operated in some very challenging conditions. What kind of conditions? Maria asked, genuinely curious about Amy's background. Amy was quiet for a moment, focusing on a particularly delicate wiring connection. Mountain rescue operations in Northern California. We operated in terrain where mechanical failures meant people died, so reliability was absolutely critical. That explains your attention to detail, Maria said. SCR work teaches you that maintenance isn't just about following procedures. It's about understanding what happens when things go wrong. Exactly, Amy agreed. But it also taught me that sometimes the most important repairs happen under the worst possible conditions. Something in Amy's tone suggested there was more to that statement than general observation. Maria sensed that Amy was alluding to specific experiences that had shaped her understanding of mechanical reliability and its importance to human survival. As they continued working, Amy seemed to be wrestling with a decision about how much of her story to share. The trust that had developed during their collaboration was encouraging her to be more open, but Maria could see that whatever Amy was considering involved painful memories. "Ma'am," Amy said finally, "can I ask you something? As a pilot, how do you handle situations where mechanical problems put people in immediate danger?" The question seemed to come from personal experience rather than academic curiosity. Maria considered her answer carefully, sensing that Amy was seeking understanding about something specific from her past. "In my experience, you focus on solving the immediate problem and worry about everything else later," Maria replied. "When lives are at stake, you use whatever skills and resources you have available, even if the situation isn't ideal." Amy nodded, as if Maria's answer confirmed something she had been thinking about. "That's what I thought too. Sometimes you have to accept risks in order to prevent something worse from happening." As Amy completed the final connections on the environmental system, she seemed to reach a decision about sharing more of her story. The sleeve of her coveralls had ridden up during the repair work, and for the first time, Maria could clearly see the extensive scarring on Amy's wrists and forearms. The scars were clearly from severe burns, with the distinctive patterns that suggested prolonged exposure to extreme heat. Maria said nothing, but Amy noticed her looking and didn't immediately pull her sleeve back down. "Those are from my last search and rescue mission," Amy said quietly. "A helicopter crash in the Sierra Nevada mountains. The air crew and 2 injured hikers were trapped in the wreckage when the fuel system caught fire." Maria felt her breath catch as she realized what Amy was telling her. "You went into burning wreckage to rescue people." Amy nodded, continuing her work on the environmental system as she spoke. "The pilot was unconscious and trapped in his harness. The co-pilot had a broken leg and couldn't move. The 2 hikers we've been sent to rescue were in the passenger compartment, and one of them was a 12-year-old girl." "How did you get them out?" Maria asked, though she was beginning to understand that the scars told most of the story. "The main cabin was filled with smoke and getting hotter by the minute. I had to crawl through the wreckage and cut people free one at a time. The metal was so hot it burned through my gloves almost immediately, but there wasn't time to wait for firefighting equipment." Maria stared at Amy, trying to imagine the courage it had taken to crawl in a burning wreckage, knowing that the aircraft could explode at any moment. "You saved 4 people. I got them out," Amy said simply. "But barely. The aircraft exploded about 30 seconds after I pulled the last person clear. If I'd been any slower, or if anything had gone wrong." "But it didn't go wrong," Maria said. "You saved 4 lives at incredible risk to yourself." Amy was quiet for a moment, completing the final calibration of the environmental system. That's why I do this job the way I do it. I understand what happens when mechanical systems fail at the worst possible moment. Every repair, every inspection, every component I touch could be the difference between someone coming home safely or not coming home at all. Maria finally understood the depth of commitment and purpose that Amy brought to her work. The young mechanic's dedication wasn't just professional pride. It was born from personal experience with the life and death consequences of mechanical failure. The burns were severe, Amy continued. I spent 3 months in the hospital, and doctors weren't sure I'd regain full use of my hands. The physical therapy was brutal, but I was determined to get back to work. I knew that my experience could help prevent other people from going through what I had experienced. Is that why you joined the Army? Maria asked. Partly. I wanted to use my skills in service of something larger than myself. Military operations depend on mechanical reliability in the same way that search and rescue does. People's lives hang in the balance based on whether equipment works when it's needed most. As Amy completed the environmental system repair and began running diagnostic tests, Maria reflected on what she had learned about the young mechanic. The scars on Amy's arms were visible reminders of extraordinary courage, but the real evidence of her character was in the dedication she brought to her current work. System checks are complete, ma'am, Amy announced. The environmental control system is fully operational and ready for this afternoon's mission. Maria examined the diagnostic readouts, confirming that all systems showed normal operation. Outstanding work, Chun. Your repair will keep aircrew safe and comfortable during what's going to be a long mission. That's the goal, ma'am. I want every pilot to know that their aircraft will function perfectly when they need it most. As they cleaned up their tools and prepared for the afternoon mission briefing, Maria found herself looking at Amy with new understanding and respect. The young woman she had initially seen as a skilled but relatively inexperienced mechanic was actually someone who had demonstrated extraordinary courage under the most dangerous possible conditions. The environmental system repair had been completed ahead of schedule, but more importantly, it had revealed the remarkable story of Amy Chen's commitment to service. Her dedication to excellence wasn't just professional competence. It was the result of experiences that had taught her the true meaning of sacrifice and the importance of never accepting anything less than perfection when lives depended on mechanical reliability. Chun, Maria said as they prepared to leave the maintenance bay, I want you to know that learning about your background has given me even greater confidence in your work. Knowing that someone with your experience and dedication is maintaining my aircraft makes me feel safer every time I fly. Thank you, ma'am. That means a great deal to me. As they walked across the flight line toward the operations building, Maria realized that Amy Chun represented something special. Not just exceptional technical skill, but the kind of courage and character that inspired others to excellence. The scars on her arms were reminders of the moment when she had risked everything to save others. But her daily work was an ongoing demonstration of the same commitment to service and sacrifice. The afternoon mission proceeded flawlessly, with the environmental control system functioning perfectly throughout the extended flight in extreme heat. As Maria piloted her Apache through the challenging conditions, she thought about Amy Chun working in the maintenance bay, ensuring that every aircraft would be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Some stories of heroism are told in headlines and celebrated with medals. But other stories unfold quietly in the daily dedication of people who understand that service sometimes requires sacrifice, and that the most important acts of courage often happen when no one is watching. Amy Chen's story was one of the latter, a testament to the idea that true heroism isn't just about single moments of bravery, but about the character that sustains commitment to excellence long after the immediate danger has passed. The scars would always remain, but they had become part of a larger story about the price of service and the meaning of dedication. In maintaining Apache helicopters with unwavering precision, Amy Chun was ensuring that other people would never have to experience what she had gone through, and that when mechanical systems were tested under the most demanding conditions, they would perform flawlessly because someone who truly understood the consequences had ensured they were ready. The patch that Maria Santos had glimpsed that day told a story of courage, sacrifice, and dedication that would inspire everyone who learned about it. But perhaps more importantly, it represented the ongoing commitment to service that Amy Chun brought to her work every single day, ensuring that the aircraft she maintained would never fail the people who depended on them for their lives.